Welcome to the Empowered Wife podcast, where it's all about fixing your relationship without your man's conscious effort so that you feel desired, taken care of, and special, even if your relationship feels completely hopeless. I'm Laura Doyle, and today I'm talking about how to stop walking on eggshells when he yells. Today, you'll hear Master Coach Kathy Murray interview a student who was lonely and sad that her husband didn't love her, didn't want to spend time with her, and she didn't know why. Then she made a discovery that led to her making some changes, and now her husband seeks out her company and conversation and her hand for holding. He told her, "This is the best thing you could have done for us." But what exactly did she do? Well, she's going to describe her journey and the specific steps she took to get there so you can take them too, including joining the free Adored Wife Challenge, which starts on January 10th, 2022. And then I'll be giving out the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award, which is from a well-known advice columnist about how a wife should handle her husband's low self-esteem. It's just 2 words that could devastate this young family if she follows them. All that's coming up, but first I'm going to share how to stop walking on eggshells when he yells. When you live with someone who blows up and loses his cool, it's very scary and draining. It seems logical to try to minimize those blow-ups however you can. You try to keep the kids quiet or keep quiet yourself or just agree with him or remove yourself when you feel the tension start to rise. It's exhausting to always be thinking about how to keep the drama from happening. Even worse, it doesn't always work, which makes the whole thing even more terrifying and tiring. Your best efforts to keep him calm by sucking it up don't stop him from blowing up. It's the worst. But what if there was something you could do that would not only make things more peaceful at your house, it would relieve you from the burden of trying to guess when outbursts will happen and how you can prevent them? Wouldn't that be empowering and just a relief? Well, here are some experiments you can try that have been effective for other wives. Number 1, change your spouse-fulfilling prophecy. What is your spouse-fulfilling prophecy for your husband? We all have spouse-fulfilling prophecies, and sometimes they're intentional, and sometimes they're unwitting. What is it you're saying to yourself and to him about this recurring dynamic in your relationship? Because usually at the end of the sentence, "I have to walk on eggshells," is something like, "or else he'll explode," or else he'll stonewall me. So if you identify with walking on eggshells, it might be that your unwitting spouse-fulfilling prophecy is, "He always explodes," or "he always stonewalls me." And when a mere mortal man hears and sees such a negative spouse-fulfilling prophecy, when he looks in his wife mirror, he could get hurt, angry, and defensive. And it's not so hard to understand that someone would react that way when his wife is expecting the worst from him. People tend to live up to your expectations for them. That negative expectation might feel entirely true and valid. And you've got history after all. But in my experience, it's also impossible to experience something other than what I'm focused on. And I get to choose what I focus on. So my question to you is, what are you currently focused on? Nobody can always explode or always stonewall. What else do you experience with him? Can you change the channel so you have a better experience? How would it be to flip your complaint into a desire and find the evidence that he is what you want him to be? So let's say you choose the SFP, the spouse fulfilling prophecy. He's a steady Eddie who stays calm. Or you could decide to affirm him because he's so patient and tender. That could be your spouse fulfilling prophecy. Can you find evidence that those things are true? It may sound totally unrealistic. I get it. That's the nature of changing your focus from what you're used to. It feels awkward. It's uncomfortable because it's not what you're used to. But if you don't like what you're used to, you can experiment. I wouldn't believe in the magic of spouse-fulfilling prophecies either if I hadn't experienced them myself so many times. If you want some magic in your life, I invite you to write down some thoughtful spouse-fulfilling prophecies and then gather the evidence that they are real. Number 2, find your paper and get back on it. When you're a kid in school, they tell you to keep your eyes on your own paper, right? Well, it turns out that's where all your power is, right on your paper. You can't control what anybody else is doing on their paper, but you have total control over your own decisions, your attitude, your words, the expression on your face, the things on your paper. One practical way to get back onto your paper is to ask yourself, how do you feel? And what do you want? Maybe you feel hungry and you want to eat lunch. Maybe you feel lonely and you want to connect with a friend. Sometimes I feel restless and I want to go for a walk. Or I feel creative and I want to make a new recipe. Or I'm bored and I want something to read, preferably with pictures. Beth shared about how when her marriage was at its lowest, she was making plans to escape her angry, domineering husband because she knew she would always be bracing for his unpredictable anger. She had been as considerate as she could in her efforts to keep him calm and prevent a blow-up. She was bending over backwards like a human pretzel to keep him happy. It was exhausting, and yet he wasn't happy either. He was downright scary at times. So she secretly gathered some getaway money because she knew that leaving him would really make him mad. She planned to surprise him. But she didn't make her getaway after all. Instead, she used the money to enroll in relationship coach training. It was a total act of faith because she couldn't see how her overbearing husband would ever change. At the beginning of training to be a coach, she says she had no idea that she had a paper and where her paper was. She couldn't find it anywhere. Eventually, she joked, she found it stuck to the back of her husband's paper. So she decided to try to focus on her paper by asking herself how she felt and what she wanted again and again. How do I feel? What do I want? How do I feel now? What do I want now? She did her best to answer the questions and honor the marching orders she got from her own soul, instead of being directed by her fear of his outbursts. And that's when a funny thing happened. Her husband had a lot fewer outbursts. That gave her an insight that all this tap dancing to keep the eggshells from breaking may have been doing more harm than good. Next, she started expressing her desires to her husband just to see what would happen. She started out with things that she felt would not upset him, like expressing a desire to get her nails done at a time that didn't seem inconvenient for him. And when that went well, she decided to stretch by expressing her desires even if she thought it would inconvenience him, which was pretty daunting. But they had come a long way as a couple, with Beth practicing the intimacy skills along with the connection framework in relationship coach training, our most highest level program. So one early morning, she said she wanted to stay in bed and rest, even though they needed to get groceries for the dinner guests. And she was amazed when he not only didn't get angry, he offered to go get the groceries himself while she stayed in bed. He seemed happy to do it. When she received that offer graciously and gratefully, he seemed to glow with pride at being his wife's hero. And by the end of the training, she felt cherished and secure in a way that felt like a complete miracle. She no longer tries to prevent his outbursts by walking on eggshells, which she now says was just her futile and annoying effort to control her husband from the back. Who knew that walking on eggshells was a form of control? She says their relationship feels so much more like it did when they first met and fell in love. So instead of getting a divorce, Beth is now happily married and on her way to being a certified relationship coach who shows other women how to find their own paper, get on it, and stay on it. It has a way of turning overbearing husbands into big teddy bears. Something big is happening on the Laura Doyle campus, and you're invited. Last summer, I hosted a free 5-day Adored Wife Challenge, and thousands of women joined to take the practical steps to make their marriages last and thrive. And even I was amazed at the astounding results they got. We're about to start the 5-day Adored Wife Challenge in 2022 on January 10th, where I'll share my best stuff for free. Register now at lauradoyle.org/challenge so you don't miss any of the action, because this only happens twice a year. Join us on our mission to end world divorce and go to lauradoyle.org/challenge. I'll see you there.
So I had come across the Empowered Wife book through a Facebook post back in 2019, August of 2019. And the discussion that was happening in that post, I resonated with it. So I looked up the book, and the title grabbed my attention right away, and I ordered it, but I didn't read it right away. So it kind of sat on my nightstand for a while. I felt like, maybe things were getting a little better. I don't really need to read the book right now. So I kind of put it on the side. I wanted it, but I didn't read it right away. And then March, April 2020, when the pandemic hit and we were in lockdown, and everything was kind of more exaggerated, if you will, just because we were always home and everybody was around all the time. Things really started to come up. Challenges started to come up. And the reason that I connected with that Facebook post to begin with were more glaring and more, so I thought, okay, I need to do something with this book now. So I read the book, and I read it relatively quickly because I'm not a reader, really. Usually I don't have a lot of time to read, and I'm not much of a reader, but I devoured the book fairly quickly, and it was an eye-opener. It was very, very humbling to just know, like, all the complaints, all the challenges, all the sadness that I had let myself feel and experience in our marriage, that I had contributed a lot to it. So I thought, oh, he doesn't love me. He doesn't want to spend time with me. He would rather work or spend time on his phone or read his newspaper than spend time with me. My complaints were like, you don't talk to me. You don't share things with me. I feel so lonely. And there were a couple other triggers that were like really triggering for me. I would get upset. I would cry. I would argue. I would,
Sounds
but
painful.
and I always felt like, why am I getting this? I thought myself to be a great wife and a great mother. I couldn't understand why I was being received this way. When I read the book, that was just like, that makes sense. Yeah, exactly. It was heartbreaking to know that I had caused so much sadness and so much tension and stress in our marriage. But hand in hand, the book also gave me a lot of hope, because what it told me was there's nothing wrong with my husband, one, and two, if I am the one that has contributed to getting where we have, then I also can fix it. And that was huge for me. So that's kind of what I took away from the book. It really hit me, like, to my core. So I started thinking about, how am I going to start implementing what I've read and learned? Because things were really tough. I mean, we were struggling to get through day to day and figuring out, like, basically feeling like we had no energy to be around each other. And would we consider separation? We have young kids. Like, what would it look like? Or do we just compromise and say life's going to be like this and just go on? And I wanted neither of them. I wanted neither of those options. So I started experimenting with the skills. And the first thing that I did was a blanket apology letter. His birthday was coming up, and as part of the gift to him, like, I am extremely sorry for everything or I apologize for. And I use the formula or the format that Laura talks about, and kind of laid out very accountable for everything that I had done, and also made a promise that I couldn't see myself going back to my old ways, because that's not acceptable to me. And that was received really well.
So inspiring, so accountable.
Yeah, that gave me hope that, okay, this could work for me. So I started next, with the relinquishing control, starting to duct tape, which is extremely hard for me because I had to have an opinion about everything. I had to share my opinion about everything. I'm a talker since I was little. And it's just something that was hard for me to duct tape and not share my 2 cents. But it was important too, because I realized, like, when I read the book, that, when I complained that he's not talking or sharing, is because I used to always fill the silence with my words. And so I started using that, and gratitude. And so those were starting to work, but I also found myself in situations that we would call bait on campus here, and not knowing how to respond, and then going back to my old ways. So, like, oh, all this work that I've done now is down the drain because now he's upset again, or oh, I've lost a day of like being kind of irritated with each other. And so I went back to the book, and at the end of the book is Laura's website. So I went on the website, and it pointed me to the free Facebook group, which is the Adored Wife Facebook group. So I joined there to see what kind of support I would get from there. And I listened to a couple of the little live videos that the coaches would do. And then in the midst of that, the 5-day challenge was introduced. And I was so excited. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go listen to Laura talk about her skills and get the cheat phrases and get some tips maybe. So I joined the challenge, and I was just looking forward to each day, learning what I took notes. And just hearing Laura in her own words was pretty powerful for me, in just seeing her passion, her excitement about what she does. And I really resonated with that. And I knew when the challenge was coming to an end, that this was just the tip of the iceberg. And I wanted more. I needed more. So right around this time of the challenge, when the offer was made for, the Ridiculously Happy Wife program, I really wanted to be part of that, because the coaching calls were what, because I felt like the videos, they're helpful because you can go back and instead of having to take out time to read, you could listen while you're doing something. That's helpful. But for me, the coaching calls were like the biggest attraction of this whole package. And when it was said that instead of the 1, 2, 3 calls a month, you were able to get to as many as you wanted, I knew this was a steal, and I wanted to be part of that. So I expressed a desire in the Laura Doyle style to my husband about wanting to be part of this program. And one of the things that was different for me about this whole journey was, a lot of times, Laura encourages us not to share too much about kind of what we're doing, to keep it a mystery. But with me starting with the book and kind of having a lot of those challenges earlier before I came to the program, he knew a lot more about it than maybe he should have at the beginning. But I think it worked in our favor anyway. And so when I expressed my desire, there was some resistance. One, because it's a financial commitment, and he's a very practical guy and wants to think about how we spend our money, and I respect that. And so instead of my old ways, where I would have steamrolled and kind of either cried or got my way by getting upset, I just stayed true to, like, vulnerably saying, like, I really think this is important for me and for us. I said, if things don't work out, I still want to be able to say to myself that I gave it my everything. And that's what I saw this chance as, like, to me go in and do everything I can to come up with the best version of myself. So, and his question was legitimate. Like, you have the book, you can go back to it as many times as you want. Why do you need the program? Why do we need to spend this money on a monthly basis? And I said, I just need the support. I want to be able to, because when we were struggling, I hadn't shared with anybody in my personal life, like my friends or my family. Nobody could tell we were going through a very difficult time in our marriage. And I said, out of respect for your wishes, I'm not sharing with anyone, but I really need and want some support for what I'm feeling and what I'm coping with. And this is new because normally I would just kind of hold my ground and say, like, this is what I want. And I would argue about, like, I'd discount his opinion or his feeling and say, like, no, but I think, this. But instead I was just sharing, like, look, I understand that it's an expense. I understand that we're going to have to rearrange some stuff. But here's where I'm coming from. I feel like the support that I would get, the mentoring that I would get. And I said, nobody knows me personally in this circle. I mean, now I feel like I have made really good friends and, but I was like, nobody knows us personally. So even if I share some of the deepest, like the triggers, because on some of the coaching calls, I had to get into the detail of the triggers but I said, nobody's going to judge you. Nobody's going to judge me. It's a very safe space. And I can be who I need to be openly so that I can become better. There was a little bit of back and forth, but fortunately he was on my side in that sense that he, before the offer was up, I was able to get in. I was able to take advantage of that offer and get into the program. So, that was me getting into the Ridiculously Happy Wife program back in July.
Wow. And I understand you made a commitment for 3 months. Also, that was part of your desire, right? It wasn't just for 1 month. You actually wanted the 3 months.
So when we were trying to discuss he asked me, like, how long would it, what will it be? And I said, it could be for as long as I want it. It could be for as little as 30 days, or it could be forever. I mean, it's up to me. And I said, they recommend 90 days because that's when, and I said, I would like to take advantage of that period. And so he agreed to the 90 days and, I was ecstatic. I joined and I got on the calls right away. Like I started listening to the modules, but since I had read the book, I was familiar with what the concepts were and the skills were. And so I kind of just really dove into the coaching calls. And actually, I think if I remember correctly, got coaching in my first week.
Wow.
Which was, it was nerve-wracking. And
Brave.
I mean, to step in front of women that I didn't know and talk about some very deep challenges. And, but I mean, everybody was so loving and supportive, and the coaches just, they wrap your arms around you and they guide you. And the motivation, like, I think for me, one of the biggest encouragements was you have to forgive yourself for what you didn't know. And because I carried a lot of guilt for a long time after I read the book, even while I was in the program. But I think that constant message of, like, you're a mere mortal woman. You cannot, you have to forgive yourself for what you didn't know, and you have to move on. And you're here because you want to be a better version of yourself. So that encouragement really kind of set in with me, and I had to let go of that guilt for myself to move forward.
Sounds like being around other like-minded women who've similarly had the same realizations and were here on the same commitment, right? To save their marriage, to be their best selves, really served you well. You felt like you were among your tribe, it sounds like.
Yeah, I think not feeling alone was a huge part of the success too. there are a couple different layers to that too, because I think it puts things into perspective for myself. It did. Like when I heard other women's stories, I cried with them. And it's sad to feel like, oh, that's great. I'm not the only one, because it's insinuating that you're glad other people are suffering. But just that feeling that you're not alone and that other women are going through similar, maybe sometimes even a lot worse situations than I am, it gives you strength to keep going. Mm-hmm. And I think the other benefit was, like I said, I cried when I heard other people, other women being coached. I got so much from even their story. I may not be able to relate to it 100%, but something in their story that caused that challenge has come up as a challenge in my life in another way. And I can implement the same coaching that, they got. Mm-hmm. But what was also amazing was when other women were succeeding and seeing wins, even if, other women weren't, they were so there with them. They were encouraging, excited for them. It never was like, oh, I'm not seeing results, so I'm not going to be happy for someone else. But no, there's so much love there. There's so much camaraderie and excitement for other women. We would guess, like when Laura posts quotes from the Ridiculously Happy Wife members onto the Adored Wife, and we would yeah, we know who that is, and we're so happy for her, and it's like friendship that we formed, so yeah, it was
it's almost an indescribable aspect of the community. I think this whole connection framework, which is the piece that was missing for so many women when Laura first wrote her books, right? She wrote the books, it was all in the books, but women just kept writing saying, we want community, we want support, we want to connect.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for these programs that we've put together so that women can come together and stand for each other, support each other, encourage each other, give each other hope and confidence. Like you said earlier, give you the confidence to experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Such a beautiful description of your experience of the cause. I know these are some of the questions people were asking. So beautiful.
Yeah. And I'd also like to share. So another part of being on the program and the coaching was it really forced me to be accountable, because I feel like when I was showing up to these calls and I wanted to talk to the coaches and I wanted to share a challenge, I really had to examine, like, in that challenge, what had been my contribution. Because if I don't introspect and figure out, what I've done to cause that challenge, or how did I respond to that challenge, then I'm not growing. Yeah. And the coaches are going to point that out as a blind spot. Like, hey, because they'll ask me like, hey, what did you do? Or how did you respond? Or how did you show up? And what happened before that led up to that comment, or that, and that accountability really held me steady on my course. I say this for myself. I don't think I would have been able to keep going if I was doing this alone. I probably would have gotten frustrated, probably would have gotten tired and given up, and accepted that this is how my life is going to be. And so best investment for myself that I've made. I knew that going in, but it was confirmed when 3 months in, my husband, I was always looking for validation from him to say, like, hey, I noticed these changes in you. You're doing so amazing. I feel so much better about where we are. I could see that in action, like in ways he was showing up already. But there was one day where he said to me that this is the best thing you could have done for us.
Wow. So happy to hear that validation came your way, where he complimented, this is the best investment you could have made. Wow.
Yeah. And to me, that it just kind of sealed it for me. Like, I didn't feel guilty about spending the money, because he had given me, his okay when I started, considering that he knew from the get-go. When he said that, like, I felt like this relief, like, working, it's moving us in the right direction. It's making us stronger. And
How did that show up? Like, what did it look like compared to before? Like, what kind of things were different?
I was very controlling about a lot of things, parenting,
Mm.
just, I mean, little things, even like, I'll give a silly example, but like when he would unload the dishwasher as something
Mm.
that he's doing to help me, and I would nitpick where things were getting put back.
Mm.
And I was like, does it really matter? I only have a limited number of cabinets in my house in the kitchen. And if it's not in this one, it can be in this one. So I kind of stopped saying things, or I
Mm.
stopped rearranging things he was doing, or,
Mhm.
um, and I think the biggest change was gratitude. So I always felt like I wasn't being loved because I
Mm.
felt like I wasn't being loved the way I wanted because I was
Mhm.
focusing on the wrong things. And, throughout the coaching and just kind of observing what other women were sharing, I started looking for evidence. Laura's really big on evidence.
Yes.
And I started looking at the things he was doing to make life easier for me.
Mm.
Started appreciating the little things, that add up to a lot.
Yeah.
And that's his way of showing that he loves me, that he cares for me. He wants to
Mm.
protect me, and he wants to keep our family safe, like the kids and me. Another thing is like TV time for our kids. I was like really controlling about that. And, we used to butt heads about it. And
Mm.
I just started letting go of the control. And if they watched 4 hours of TV that day, I had to stop feeling guilty as a mom, because in this
Mm.
time of pandemic, when we were both trying to work and we're both trying to run a
Mhm.
household, like there were
Mm.
times where we just had to be okay with that.
Mm.
So started just kind of stepping back, using less words. Those were our interactions now. I used whatever you think a lot.
Mm.
I used to be really involved in like, what are you doing for your work? Because he's self-employed. He has his own business, and
Mhm.
I was kind of always on his case about like, what are you doing now? What's the progress? What's the next step? And
Mm.
since I read the book, and more so since I joined the program, I kind of stopped asking those questions. And what I noticed was he started coming to me and sharing
Mm.
like, here's the new idea. I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about that. And then he would ask me, what do you think? Or, what should I name the company or whatever, like random questions. And I would defer him to his own thinking. And that's
Nice.
new for him because I always had an opinion. And if he asked me again, I would follow up with, no, you always come up with great ideas. I trust you. And I can see his face
Wow.
light up. And
What a change in culture in your home. I'm so inspired. Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Oh, tell me, what is it like now? And after 3 months, I know you stayed an extra month. Is that right? And we got to talk on the phone.
Yeah.
Mm.
So there's a story behind that as well. So culture is definitely peaceful, very peaceful.
Mm.
I used to get angry very easily. We used to argue a lot. I used to force him to stay up until 2, 3 a.m. and talk things
Mm.
out. I stopped doing all of that. Um, I also was like always wanting physical affection and touch, and
Mhm.
I relinquished control of how and kind of when that, and
Mm.
I've come to accept that he's just not a very touchy-feely kind of a guy. He loves me, he cares for me.
Mhm.
I just kind of stepped back and let him fill the space with, whether it's with his words, whether it's with his, just kind of letting there be space. And
Mm.
things are so different now.
Mm.
I find him reaching over for my hand when we're watching a movie, or things like that. And even like when we're having difficult conversations, because some of the triggers are still there, and I'm
Sure.
able to be vulnerable about it, but not angry or upset. And that
Mm.
is received so much better. And
Mhm.
he's so much more understanding and softer. And
Mm.
if I apologize after, like I had a moment yesterday where I was bringing up that trigger that we've kind of not talked about as much in the last few months, but it kind of overwhelmed me, and I was crying about it. And I
Mm.
showed up very vulnerable to him. I shared, and I came back later and I was like, look, I apologize for ruining your afternoon with that conversation. He's like, you didn't ruin my afternoon. He's like, it's okay to talk about these things and I'm here for you. And so it's very different now because I'm not getting angry. I'm not getting frustrated. I'm just being my authentic self and letting my feelings have their day in the sun, but then able to reel the net back quickly. So
Sounds like you've
different.
Created a lot of emotional safety too, is what I'm hearing. Really makes it safe for you to be vulnerable and for him to be supportive. And
yeah.
Wow. So inspiring. Wow.
So I want to circle back on the comment about the extra month. So when the 90 days were up, I knew it was coming up for renewal and I was really nervous to not renew. So I just didn't say anything. I didn't bring it up and I let it auto renew for the 4th month. And he asked me about it when he got a text from the credit card company that said they had been charged again. He said, "Oh, did you just forget to cancel it?" I said, "No, I really wanted to be in it for another month." And he said, "Okay." And it just kind of let it go. But one of the coaches pointed out that was disrespectful. That was a blind spot for me because I didn't think of it like that. I just kind of let it slide under the radar, if you will. And that was an aha moment for me when the coach said, like, that was disrespectful to your husband because you guys had agreed on the 90-day. And so I went back. I apologized for it. Again, received really well. And then came December and I was again really nervous to let go of my training wheels, right? That's what this feels like. It's training wheels for life, for becoming the better version. And I didn't feel like I was there yet. I don't consider myself to be my best version yet. So this time I didn't let it auto renew without talking to him first. So I expressed a desire to stay in it, to ride out 2020 with this awesome community, with the support that I've got. I said, so 2020 has been a difficult year for us, and I've really benefited from it. And I think you can see that we have benefited from that. And I would love to stay this extra month. And then so that I can say I wrapped up 2020 in, with some support. And he said, okay, if that's what you think, is best, then go for it. So I was really excited.
Yes.
So I stayed in it an extra month. I think that's when we connected. I think it was a month ago that you and I connected on that 90-day assessment call.
Yes. So, and wow, what a conversation we got to have. And I heard about your commitment to not only your marriage, which is so obvious with all your success, but just your desire to really make it your life's work. And you mentioned you have a daughter that you really want to be a role model for her. And I just enjoyed meeting you so much. And I want to acknowledge you for staying for the 90 days and restoring respect, and also expressing the desire afterwards to go ahead and stay anyway in the 4th month. And I just give you all the credit for your commitment to your marriage. You're so, so welcome. My goodness. Anything else about that you want to share at this time? Because I have another question to ask.
No, I just, it's been a blessing. I think I mentioned to you on that call too, that, I feel blessed every day that I found Laura's book and this community when I did. I wish I would have found it sooner, but I also am thinking that, I found it when I needed it the most. I was ready to receive what the book had to say, what Laura had to say. Because and there's a quote that sticks out a lot, is there's always a breakdown before the breakthrough. And that has been very true for me in my situation, because I don't think I would have felt the same way about the book until I hit this point where I was like, I wouldn't have taken all the blame upon me to realize when I read the book, like, oh yeah, this is what I've done. Maybe that's how I feel right now. I'm just counting my blessings to have found it. I wish it would have been sooner, so we would have had better 10 years of our marriage than we did, but better late than never. And I count my blessings every day since March of 2020 to have found the book and the community since July. So, yeah.
Wow, I'm so inspired. I know you're inspiring a lot of women who are listening today. What a beautiful story. So if you could share a tip, what's a tip that you'd like to leave, to someone who's listening, maybe wondering if this is right for them or what they should do next? What's a tip you can share?
I think the key is just having trust in the process, and patience. And, so just stay steady, stay consistent, and get the support, right? I used to you having a place where you can go and share your challenge and then receive comfort and love and support and encouragement, even while they're struggling themselves, is amazing. Like, you just feel like you're wrapped up and, people are lifting you up. And then when you're winning, you don't feel like you should hold back because other women are struggling, because even if they're struggling, they're still there to share your joy and happiness about your win with you. They're there to cheer you on. And the coaches are just amazing. They're so loving. They're so caring. For me, the support was critical. I think it made the biggest difference in me succeeding at the skills. So my takeaway is that I couldn't have done it without the group and the coaches.
Wow. Well, I thank you for being willing to share your story today. It's really inspiring to hear that you not only had some early success with this skill, some early insights, but really you knew that community was going to be a big piece of what you needed. And of course, that's why we're here. So we're really glad that you said yes to yourself and that you stayed for the 90 days, even longer. And now you're going to be with us for a little longer, because I understand you're going to be in our coach training in January. Out of our conversation in the 90 days, you got to really see and make a bigger desire with your husband, right?
Yes.
So I'm super excited for you and to be on this journey with you. And again, I thank you for sharing your inspiring story today. I can't wait to be with you in coach training in January. Did you want to say something else?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so that realization that I was probably going to get out of the program in December, and I was like, how do I want to keep this connection for life? And while I was in the program, I was able to share with two of my closest friends, not the details of the challenges we were having, but just what I had found and how it helped me. And one of my friends bought the book, read it, and it helped her in her relationship. And that just made me feel like, wow, I have this treasure. I want to share that with other women. And how can I do that? So there were two reasons why I was wanting to be a coach. And that is, one, to have the connection with the framework and the skills for lifetime for myself, so that I can be the best role model for my daughter and my son, even, really. And then the next piece of that was to be able to pass this on to women that are not only in my immediate circle, but, everywhere. So I am ecstatic to be joining coach training and learning from you and Laura. So I look forward to that in a couple weeks here. I'll miss my friends from the Ridiculously Happy Wife program, but I am really excited about the coach training program.
Well, I thank you for being willing to share your story. Thank you so much.
Something big is happening on the Laura Doyle campus, and you're invited. Last summer, I hosted a free 5-day Adored Wife Challenge, and thousands of women joined to take the practical steps to make their marriages last and thrive. And even I was amazed at the astounding results they got. We're about to start the 5-day Adored Wife Challenge in 2022 on January 10th, where I'll share my best stuff for free. Register now at lauradoyle.org/challenge so you don't miss any of the action, because this only happens twice a year. Join us on our mission to end world divorce and go to lauradoyle.org/challenge. I'll see you there. And now it's time for the Worst Relationship Advice of the Week award.
It's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice. Yeah, it's the worst relationship advice of the worst relationship advice of the week.
And the advice that has me incensed this week was sent to me by one of my coaches who flagged this terrible advice for me because she loves me and she loves the intimacy skills and she knows what really works to improve your marriage because she's done it herself. And therefore, she knows smelly, terrible advice when she sees it. And she's absolutely right about this bit of tripe. So here's a big anonymous shout out to you, Coach. I'm so happy you shared this stinky advice. Thanks for the great contribution to the podcast. Now, the advice is in response to a wife who writes, quote, "My husband has self-esteem issues despite my constant reassurance. His self-esteem issues impact our relationship. When I try to express my feelings or things I would like him to improve on, he gets very emotional and reacts like I'm telling him he is the worst person in the world. Recently, I told him how I would like his help more with our 1-year-old and gave examples, and he took it as me saying he never helps. I end up feeling terrible for making him upset. The problem is we need to have these conversations to grow as a couple and a family. How can I have them without him becoming upset?" Ooh, so this woman is suffering because she doesn't know how to express her desires in a way that inspires her husband. And she probably doesn't realize when she's being disrespectful because nobody probably ever taught her. And she thinks that she needs to point out his shortcomings for him to improve, just like I used to. And that's a painful place to be. I still remember. It doesn't work. It doesn't inspire him to do more or want to snuggle. And then that's scary because you think you're going to be stuck with Mr. Loser Pants forever. And let's not forget, ever. And then he also starts avoiding you. You know, the woman who knows him best in the world is reflecting back to him that he's falling short at this really important job of making his wife happy, that he's below average. And for some reason, he seems to have low self-esteem. So it's pretty heartbreaking for me to hear her pain and see how she just doesn't have the right information to fix her marriage, to make it last and thrive, or even to make herself happy, it sounds like. And she wants to know how she can criticize her husband without upsetting him because she thinks that's how she's going to get help. Oh, she wants to be able to say, "You've been a crummy husband and father this week," and then have him jump off the couch with a smile to start bath time and bedtime. Because that's how it works, right? What she probably really wants is maybe a break from the nonstop demands of being the mom of a 1-year-old, maybe, right? Maybe she wants to just watch the Hallmark Channel for a couple hours or take a nap or go out with her friends. Of course, I'm making that up. And we can't know from this letter what it is she wants because all she knows is she doesn't have whatever that is. But if you don't know what you want and you can't tell anybody, of course, you're never going to get what you want. He might love to be her hero. He might love to have that chance if she did know what she wanted and she could tell him. So this letter really pulls at my heartstrings because I identify with this wife who wrote it. And it's really sad and scary to be in that spot. But also, it's so fixable and she has the power to fix it. And that's why the advice columnist's answer really, really tweaks me. Okay, so what did the advice columnist tell her to do? The syndicated columnist tell her to do. She writes, quote, "I'll start this with the entirety of my advice in 2 words. Therapy. Now." She continues, "Your husband clearly would benefit from professional help, and I do hope he already is in counseling." What? Okay, but my advice to you is find a therapist for you and get to work on both understanding and navigating this. And then she goes on to say that the husband appears to be manipulative and even abusive. I am not kidding. And then I just start wincing and swearing, and I can't even read any more of this horrible rubbish because it's sending this wife down a very dark alley. One I've been down. It's a dead end. And I'm pretty upset about it. She's inviting this poor wife to go to a therapist and complain about her husband for an hour a week. Nobody ever got happier by complaining about their husband for an hour a week. But some families did get destroyed that way. Some couples have lost their marriage that way. Children have had to suffer through a divorce as a result. In other words, following this advice could lead to a terrible, unnecessary tragedy. And that's something I can't stand to see. Not on my watch. For that reason, the advice, therapy now, is the very, very, very worst relationship advice I have heard all week. Listen and subscribe to the Empowered Wife podcast. Next week, I'll share 2 ways to hear his heart message. In the meantime, I hope you're having lots of fun. Today's fun fact is that my husband, John, wrote a joke for the podcast today. Did you hear how angry the farmer was when his delivery truck overturned? Everyone was walking on eggshells.